The views and opinions of the guests of Veterans Archives do not reflect the views and opinions of Veterans Archives, its subsidiaries, or its partners. Hello and welcome to Veterans Archives. This is a podcast where you can learn about our military history in the words and voices of the men and women who lived and created it. I'm your host, Bill Krieger, and let's listen to our next story. Today is Wednesday, May 3rd, 2023. I'm talking with Austin Crouch. And Austin, you served in the United States Army?
Yes, I did.
All right, perfect. So we're going to start out real simple. I'm just going to talk a little bit about you growing up. So let's start at the very beginning. When and where were you born?
So I was born on July 28th, 1992, and I was born in Muncie, Indiana.
All right. So been in Indiana most of your life other than the time you served?
Born and raised.
All right. Well, I'm born and raised in Michigan, so I can identify with that. So what was it like growing up, Austin? What was it like being a kid in Indiana?
It's a very small town life, right? I grew up in the Corn Belt, right? So lots of agriculture and stuff like that. I was blessed to grow up in a town where all of my family lived in that town. I lived a block away from my grandma and a block away from my aunt. Other grandma lived across town, right? And I had all my cousins and stuff nearby. So, I spent, I think, every day after school over at my grandma's with my cousins playing. And it was, looking back and realizing now, I was like, I was very lucky to have that childhood. Growing up, I attended Delta High School, middle school. It was cool. School was never truly my jam, but I enjoyed the social aspect of it more than anything. And I did find some studies that moved me, and I enjoyed those a lot. I played sports through school, and but my favorites, I think, were like the hometown baseball leagues that we had. That had all my friends and stuff like that. We all get together and play sports against each other. And it was the great part of the summer was the late nights at the Ball Diamonds and stuff like that. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, good. So you're familiar with the movie Sandlot?
I sure am.
Okay, because that's almost what it sounds like to me.
In a way it was, right? So yeah, absolutely.
Well, I have to imagine with all your family living in a small town like that you probably didn't get away with a whole lot.
No, yeah. And, my dad's one of those people. These people come up and talk to me and it's like, you Crouch's boy. I'm like, yeah, that's me. I don't know who they are, but I talk to my dad and he's like, oh yeah, that's such and such. He lives, he lives over there. His dad was, his dad was this guy. And, he'll tell you this stuff. He's just the guy that kind of knows everybody and everybody knows him. And, it makes sense. He's lived in that town his whole life, and his grandma and his dad lived in that town the whole life. So
yeah,
long lineage.
So what did your dad do for a living?
My dad's a mechanic by trade. Yeah. Okay. So I lucked out. I take all my car problems to him, and it seems like a majority of the people do. And he's always he's really good at that. I don't think there's a single thing that I've noticed that he can't fix. So yeah. Now,
are he and your mom were they married throughout your childhood?
Still are. So yeah.
All right.
Yep, still are. They both, when I grew up, they both worked a lot. I think they've worked a couple different jobs altogether throughout their time being married and stuff like that. But they worked hard for us to provide the best life they could for us. And, and I never growing up and looking back now, I realized it never went for a want in the world. And, like I said, I was blessed.
Well, that's good. That's good. A lot of people couldn't say that. So you said us. I'm assuming there's some siblings in there, some brothers and sisters.
Yeah. So I only have one sister. And growing up, she was a couple years younger than me. My parents thought that the age gap would help us get along, but growing up, we were always kind of at each other's throats. She's grew up to be very successful, and I'm super proud of her. I think she works at Consumers Energy up in Michigan right now, and she was also a big sports brat growing up in softball and all these other things. And she had to deal with my mom coaching her through school and stuff like that. So that I didn't get that too much. So yeah.
Was there any competition between the two of you?
I didn't think that there was, but there is a little bit, I think, like, especially as I got older to an adult and she started making some big moves in life. And I was like, you know, I was like, I don't think I can be outshined by my little sister. So I think I had to start making some moves myself to kind of make myself feel better. A little bit of jealousy, maybe. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that could help drive you. So you went through school, you played some sports. It sounds like just an amazing place to grow up as a kid. At what point did you decide to join the military?
So when I grew up, I didn't have I didn't have a whole lot of plans to join the military when I was growing up, but like I would always my grandfather was a Navy veteran, and I would always find myself on his porch, listening to stories that he would tell. And I was just intrigued, man, because he'd tell me stories about him going all over the ocean and, checking out the Philippines and all these different things. And that sense of adventure definitely, I think, tied me in a lot more to it. And then I remember, I think a big turning point was 9/11, and that happened. I was in third grade, and I remember we were all sitting in this big atrium in third grade in Eaton Elementary School, and I don't know why they're letting us watch it, but they did. And on the TV, you could see the plane that came in and it hit the tower. And as soon as it hit the tower, they shut the TV off and they sent us home that day. And I at time didn't really understand exactly what that was. I know that it was serious, just the way that everything was going. And then, like, as things developed further on in life, with that and the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan, I knew more and more people that went. And I decided that I too wanted to serve my country. And so, yeah, I would say that the seeds were planted with my grandfather on that porch step of service to your country and the adventure part of it, for sure. And then I definitely felt the sense of drive further on in life as I watched things develop down the line. So,
okay. And then why the Army?
Why the Army? Well, I joined the Army because I wanted to be infantry. Right. I wasn't super sold on any other job out there. I had other options as well. But I wanted to be, at the time, what I thought was, like the kind of like the best of the best. No, that's not the Army slogan, right? But, like I wanted to be in the fray of it. I wanted to be the guy on the ground, and that's the guys you always watch on TV and stuff like that, right? And that's who I wanted to be. So, yeah.
So you went down, you saw the recruiter, and you were on your way.
Yeah, it's funny how they rope you into that.
Let's talk a little bit about how that went for you.
Right. No, I went down there and they had like not a delayed entry program, but, I went into what's called a Future Soldiers program, and I was in there for a while, and they would take all the recruits in the local area, and then we get together and work out or get together and like play game, like activities and stuff after school. They'd like prep you through like MEPS and stuff like that. I knew I was going my senior year of high school, and I had to lose like 20 something pounds to make weight and tape. So they were helping me out with that mindset. Taught me some things to do. Told me that track would be a good idea for me. So right. So I was doing a sprint and track and wrestling and stuff like that, to kind of lose the weight. And they were pretty essential in like forming that mentality. And get nothing will truly ever prepare you, right, for showing up in a bus, but yeah, so they were pretty essential in doing that, and they were good people. So
they got you prepped, but you're right, like nothing really prepares you for what's going to happen. So, talk us through what it was like to get off that bus and start like that first day of boot camp.
Yeah,
what you remember of it.
Right. So, just even before the first day, we got the 30th AG, which is like the main holding battalion down there. And everything was super chill. And it was way relaxed. And, and like you kind of had to follow the rules. But, like the drill sergeant stuff weren't like really yelling at you and everything. I was wondering, like, is this what it is? And I knew we were waiting to go down what they call down range, but it's really just waiting to go to your actual training, whatever battalion you're going to train with. That day came, and so we all load up on the bus to go down there, and it is cool, right? It's always in the movies that you see they come on the bus, start screaming at you and stuff like that. But, what they don't tell you is that there's a good like 15, 20 minutes, man. You're sitting on that bus out in front, and it's quiet. It's dead quiet. Everyone's super nervous. They don't know what to expect, and then the lights come on the bus, and And there he comes, walks in with the hat, and he's giving me instructions and stuff. And for me personally, I was nervous, right? But I was ready, and and as ready as I could be. And they shot me off that bus and formed us up, and told us everything that we were doing wrong, and
right? Which is pretty much everything, right?
Right, yeah, pretty much everything, right? From the way you're standing to what you had on to all those things, and it was interesting. It was definitely an eye opener, and it's kind of listening you just kind of got to lean into. So
grow up pretty fast in that environment, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like the thing is like I also think, but not only you grow up fast, but you learn a lot of responsibility as well with it. And I was lucky. I had some really good drill sergeants that I loved a lot there, and I avoided all the bad ones for the most part. So yeah, 216th Infantry Battalion is when I was down. So yeah, it was good.
Well, good. Is there anything like that sticks out in your mind? Like when you think back to basic training, is there like one or two things that really kind of stick out in your mind that like you'll never forget? That'll be the story that you tell everyone.
Oh man, yeah, there's a couple. So throughout the training, I remember, and people think this is like not PC, but I don't really care. I was on a firing line once, and I didn't put my weapon back on safe when I was done firing it. And I remember I had a drill sergeant kick me in the helmet so hard that the helmet kind of went over on my side of my head, and I was just on the line, just kind of sitting there like I don't know what to do with my hands, right? And and it's something like that. And he's yelling at me, screaming at me, and stuff. And I remembered after that, I never messed it up again after that, And then there was another time that I remember. It's called the Bayonet March, and I just remember just walking through these back roads of Georgia. I don't even know like where these roads were or or anything like that, And it's nighttime, and I'm just by myself. Like they released us, and like it was like you just have to make it to the end kind of thing, And I just remember walking down this damn road in the middle of the night, in the middle of the darkness, like just exhausted, just no sleep for I don't know how long. And I don't have that whole memory in my head. I just have glimpses and pieces. I can go back to my head, and I can remember this march where I'm just trudging down this road in darkness, And I remember getting to where we were going. I got maybe an hour or two of sleep, and I had blisters on my feet I hurt to walk. And we never stopped, and we kept going. We were down for an hour or two, and then we went and we did training where we were assaulting positions and stuff like that. And and I think it was after that nothing ever hurt anymore after that march, right? Like what I mean? Like everything, right? Everything is kind of blended in together. So yeah, it was one of those things.
Oh yeah, I remember those days, and I don't know if this was your experience, but there's some sort of weird satisfaction in that pain.
Oh yeah.
Like I haven't felt it since I got out of the military, but I remember it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a bad thing.
Nope. I know like we used to have Sunday sessions. It seemed like where, after it was kind of like cleaning time and downtime in the bays and stuff like that. And we had one particular drill sergeant, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I remember his face. And I won't say sadistic. That was the wrong way, but he loved to push us in ways that we may not have always thought were the most constructive. But now I realize why is because one day he was tearing us up one afternoon, and it got to the point, right, where we were out there for so long that everyone started laughing and just embraced it, right, and they were having fun with it. And he's telling us, like stop laughing, all these other things, and everyone's just having fun. And it's that point realizing, right, like that there's nothing that you like. That's the first time I remember feeling like one, right, like with everybody there. Like there's nothing that you can do to push us away. There's nothing that you can do to break us. Like we all wanted to be there. This was 2 or 3 months in, or 2 months in, something like that. So it was towards the end of it. You know what I mean? And it was like one of those moments where you said you just kind of like that satisfaction of, that there's nothing that you can do that's going to turn me away kind of thing. And I realize now why you did it. And I can see what its purpose was, and I think it achieved it.
Yeah, there's a lot of bonding that happens when you're all embracing the suck.
Yeah, and we embraced it that day for sure. So.
I can only imagine. So you made it through basic training. Did you make some friendships there that have carried on since?
Yeah, I did. And sadly, I've lost a lot of contact with those guys. I still talk to one man, Aaron Laux. He was he's a hot shot. This man went to basic when he was in his 30s. Right. And I'm 30 now, and he was a couple years older than 30 when I remember him going through. And man, he was outrunning a lot of them kids out there. And he was a solid rock to lean on. He had a lot of life experience going into it. He had a lot of reason to be there, and I'll never forget him to this day. I don't talk to him as often as I probably should. He's on. I usually just talk to him like Facebook Messenger and stuff like that. But he's a good man, and he's forever someone that I know that, if he ever called me tomorrow, I needed something, I'd probably be there. So.
Oh yeah. Well, let me ask you this: when you talk to him now, does it feel like you've never been? You just kind of pick up where you left off, like you never were apart?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, things in life change and situations change and stuff like that. But I know that he could hit me up tomorrow and we could have a conversation just like we were always friends from the start, right? Like I grew up with this dude and didn't just meet him for, a solid couple months out of my life. Right. I do think that those the things that we went through together definitely formed that bond, right? To where it's almost like you said, like we were there together yesterday. So
you're at Benning. You survive basic training, which a lot of people, don't make it all the way through. Where did you go after basic?
So after basic, I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, 1st Infantry Division. I was in a 4th Brigade, 216th Infantry Division, Charlie Company. That's where I went out of there.
Okay. And what was it like being at Fort Riley? I mean, it's Kansas, so it's hot.
I like Fort Riley a lot. I like Kansas a lot. And I still have ties there to this day. I enjoyed it a lot. It's my first place outside of Indiana that I've lived in. Summers were hot, and then the wind never blew into the wintertime when it was cold, and the wind never stopped blowing, right? And, when I first got to my unit, when I first got to my unit, I feel like things were in a little bit of disarray. They were coming back from an Iraq deployment, and then stuff at that time was kind of dying down. But I was lucky to come into a platoon that had some solid guys that were coming out of the theater, and they had seen some things over there. And I think Sadr City and like Mosul and stuff like that. So they definitely knew their stuff. I wasn't the only one. There was a bunch of young guys that came into that platoon that were fresh, no patches, no nothing. And they whipped us up into shape and got us ready, because I think that they knew we were deploying pretty quickly. But I don't think they knew how soon. And sure enough, I was there probably a year before I went, less than a year before I went to Afghanistan.
So what year did you deploy?
I deployed in 12 and 13. So I graduated high school in 11, and then I deployed in 2012 to 2013. Yep.
Okay. And where were you at?
So we went to, I was deployed to RC East in Afghanistan in a place called Ghazni province, at a COP 4 Corners. It's out in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and it's true to its name. There's 2 connecting highways in between there that make 4 corners, and we were at one of them. So, it was a place that was, it was pretty agricultural. We were lucky enough that it wasn't somewhere up in the mountains that were super crazy. It's fairly flat. There were some hills and stuff like that. But it made for an interesting terrain because of a lot of the farm fields, and there were some smaller towns and stuff like that around. But everything was pretty far flung apart from each other. So it was a little different. It was fun. I think it was different than what they were anticipating coming from like the urban combat and stuff they saw a lot in Iraq.
Yeah. So what was a day in the life like where you were at?
Day in the life at COP 4 Corners. So our company had our own mission, right? Where we were stationed at, we had 3 platoons with us on a 3-day battle rotation. We do 3 days of patrol, 3 days of basically stage and guard, and then 3 days of QRF, right? Quick reactionary force. So right off the rip, we were working alongside of an A&A unit that was down the road. And our goal was to turn our little green circle that was like this into a bigger, to get into the red and start making contacts with the locals and started trying to find out where these Taliban were and some and the HVTs that we had ideas on where they are. So yeah, it was interesting. We didn't waste any time getting to it. We ripped out, I want to say 10th Mountain Group. I could be wrong in that. But they were, from what I understand at the time, is that they had not made a whole lot of gains in the ground around us and stuff like that. So what we walked into was pretty, I want to say, is unknown. Well, we didn't have a whole lot of intel on what was going on out there besides what the ANA were telling us. And like I said, we wasted no time going to it. We started our first patrol, I think, maybe a week or two in. And we took contact maybe the first week, like the first time we went out. And it was something. So.
Well, you had your train up. You had the benefit really of working with a lot of folks who had already been there. But talk to me a little bit about what it was like taking that first contact, because that's the real thing.
Nothing really. Like, it was weird because, like, you know, we did a lot of drills and stuff like that. But like you said, it is the real thing. And I remember the whole day. I remember pretty well. We're going to a place called Saipai, and I can point it to you on a map. I have looked and tried to find it. But we went with our vehicles and we were out to a dismount patrol into this town, and we didn't realize the town was as big as what we thought it was going to be. I remember walking into that town, and there was no one there, right? It was one of those places where it was dead quiet. And as that first time I realized, right, like that everyone was kind of on edge a little bit because there was no villagers there. There was no kids out playing in the street. There's nothing. So we turned tail pretty quickly, and we realized something was up, and we were taking a different way out than what we went. So when we were walking out to go back, we were crossing Wadi, which is a big ditch, and then there was maybe about 200 to 300 yards of freshly plowed farm fields out there to a kalat, which is like a walled housing structure on the far side. A&A were leading us through. And then the platoon was going through in a line trying to spread out. And I remember that it was me, my buddy Corey Hammond, and specialist Dmitry Lesnick that were last in line. And as we were walking through, we're maybe 20 to 30 yards into this field, not very far at all from the wadi itself. And I start hearing fireworks, and I can hear them cracking like over me. And I'm wondering, my mind first with the fireworks, and then like training reflex kind of kicked in, and I remember I was hugging the ground, and surprisingly I did fairly well. I knew that it wasn't coming in front of us, so I yelled out to Lesnick. I said, "Hey man, I came from behind us," and we were able to turn around and understand like where that was coming from and communicate to our team. Because the last I looked at them, for them, they were running towards the kalat, and we were in the dirt. And and when we got into a little bit of a sticky situation there, because on the far side there was a wood line, of some palm groves and stuff like that they were firing from, and our platoon, once they got set, they were firing back at them over this field, so we couldn't bound backwards, and we were kind of stuck where we were, just kind of holding out. I don't know if they saw us there at first, but I know that they did once we started shooting back at them. And we were in a bit of a situation where we needed to get out of there pretty quickly. So what we ended up doing was we ended up taking that wadi. So we ended up finding a break in the fire enough that we could get up and pretty much just bail into this wadi, this ditch. And just sprint all the way down this ditch, man, all the way back to where we were almost in line with where our unit was. And then once again, we had to get out, and we had to make that run, which is, I say, a solid, 200 yards, felt like a mile. And there was no cover or nothing. It was pretty much just a dead sprint across this field to try and get back over to where they were. And it was exhilarating for sure. It was a rush. And it was pretty interesting stuff. I know, afterwards everyone's like, yeah, this is what happened. They got us in an ambush. It was what they call an L-shaped ambush from where we were in our positions. And the way they were shaped up and where they were firing at us from the PKMs, one area, they were also shooting from us from a line in another. And they must be bad shots because they had us dead to rights, man. And and I don't know, man, they missed us, or they didn't see us, or I don't know how it worked out. But there was 3 men out in that field that day that ran back, and they were separated. It was pretty interesting stuff.
Always good when everyone can make it back, especially in a situation, like that. But if you think about all the training that you had, we were talking earlier about, being out on a ruck march and it's hot and it's nighttime and sometimes you're just ready to stop walking, right?
Right.
But that's what trains you for these situations where you're going to have to sprint the 200 yards. It's no joke. You're going to sprint the 200 yards or there's going to be a problem. So was this kind of a regular occurrence while you were there then?
I would say that we didn't take as much contact as other groups did. We had our fair share of it. There were some days we went out and had nothing at all happen to us. And there were other days that went out that we did like with route clearance patrols and stuff like that. I watched a truck get blown in half and I only laughed because everyone made it out unscathed from that. I know we held back the guy out, but I think it was just for hypertension of his leg and stuff like that. It could have been so much worse. Right. And the weird thing about that, the way it happened was, is that like, yeah, that was like four or five trucks into the convoy. Right. And, it was interesting because, reached back into that drill sergeant kind of conversation I had, when they told us, there's these guys aren't just goat herders, man. Like they're not dumb people, right? They're well equipped and well motivated foreign fighters, right? That are out there trying to inflict as much damage as they can. And the way they made their IED was that they had so much little metal in it that those trucks that are made to like pick up those lines and stuff like that, or to pick up like the ant trails or however you want to call it, didn't register it. It was a pressure plate. And by the time that third or fourth truck passed through, the fifth truck was enough to make pressure. And I just remember looking up and seeing tires going through the air and, loud exciting. I don't think I even heard the explosion, but I felt it. And, and then once we wagon wheeled, it was fairly quiet until the bird came in. And, then once the bird came in and it blew all that dust up, man, they just let us have it. And I remember there's nothing you can do at that moment but sit there and just wait, right? And just wait until they can get that guy out into the bird. And, you can't really fire back at what you can't see, and it was interesting stuff. So, but I think that was a big one. And then I know that one of our platoons went out with a company that was in our battalion, Delta Company, and they had a pretty big tick out there, in which Captain Neal died, and he was killed in action out there. And I didn't know the guy personally, but from what I understand, is that he was a great leader and he inspired a lot of his men, and that was a big thing for us to go out there because that we never lost a U.S. soldier out there. I know that we lost a lot of Afghans that fought through the ANA and AUP. A lot of those guys died out there with us, but we never lost a U.S. guy, and that was the first one that we lost. And it was particularly bad because it was so close to the end. It was I think 7 months in or 8 months in, I think like that. It was pretty. It was a grim reminder, right, that no matter how close the light is at the end of the tunnel, that we're not out of it yet. And the fighting season wasn't over, and, they're still out there. So,
well, you got to keep your focus the whole time.
Right. Yeah. And, and it's weird how it works because, and being out there is different. I remember being like 6 months in thinking, I pretty much drank the Kool-Aid at that point, and I wasn't even thinking about home. To be honest with you, I had displaced home so far away in my mind that I didn't even care about it. Like I oftentimes didn't have the energy to call home or anything like that. And, cause I just didn't know, right? Like I just didn't know what would happen. And, it was a little different, but I had a squad leader, Sergeant Rutz. And he broke things down to me pretty easily in the first couple of weeks. He said, man, he said, this is just the easiest thing you'll ever do in your life. He said, nothing matters. It's like your girl at home doesn't matter. Your family doesn't matter. The bills don't matter. Your house doesn't matter. He said, we leave the gate with 26 people. We come back in the gate with 26 people. Right. And like, that's all that matters. And, in a situation like that, where you have everything on the line, to break it down so simply, man, it's all that mattered. Right. Right. It's like,
Right,
it sounds cliche, but it's like, in the end, dude, this really is, you just got to make sure that you're doing everything you can for the guys next to you, left and right. And, so.
Right. So then you come home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And back to all those things that didn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that transition. You redeploy and you go back. I'm assuming you went back to Fort Riley.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened? And if there's anything I'm skipping in between, please feel free to fill in.
No, I came back. So we came back to Fort Riley, Kansas, and we had our welcoming group and stuff like that. And it was, it was a high spirits and stuff like that. Had some time off, had a month off of leave, to which we kind of I went back home to my family and everything, and it was cool. In my heart, I feel like I didn't have any problems switching back over. But I know, looking back now, I probably struggled with a little bit more than I should have. That first month, everything's a blur. You're the hometown hero, right? Your family's happy you're home, and and you got a girlfriend that's happy you're home. This, that. But it wasn't until a couple months down the line that I struggled a lot. I struggled a lot with garrison life after that, because I realized, man, this sucks, right? Like, this is not, you know what I mean? Like, this is not what I signed up for. I wanted to go back and to keep going. And I knew leaving, I was going to have some issues, because as we were waiting for the birds to come back, because we went in on a helicopter and came out in a helicopter from our cop. I was thinking, man, I don't really want to go back. And so when I came back to garrison, I lacked motivation a lot to deal with the garrison life of it all, and it just wasn't really what I wanted to do anymore. So that kind of helped me out a little bit, knowing that I only had a year and some change left on my term. But yeah, then a lot of our friends left, right? And times like that, and we got some new people in, and I made friends with some of the new ones, but it was a little different watching all my friends leave and go their own certain ways and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Now, did you stay in, or did you get out while you were at Fort Riley?
4 and done, right? 3 and done. 3 and changes and done. Yeah, I stayed at Fort Riley. I did. They were shipping back up to go to Africa. They were going to go. I believe that they were guarding some outpost in Kenya, and I was like, well, that sounds fun, right? And I was like, I don't know about that. I recently had a child and everything, and she had already went back to Indiana and everything, and I realized, man, I need to be on the home front, I think, and take care of him and do those things, right? So I got out while the getting was good, and they went on to continue the mission, though, and then a lot of those guys that I was with went to Kenya, and it seemed like they had a good time. Mm-hmm. They went to Fort Polk beforehand, and I hear it was not a good time, and so I dodged that one. So
Fort Polk is not a good time.
Yeah.
Neither is Camp Shelby, Mississippi. I'll just tell you.
Before we went to Afghanistan, we went to NTC for Irwin training. Yeah, and that's the first time I realized that the desert wasn't hot all the time, and it was pretty cold. And I was like, oh, this is beautiful territory, right? Beautiful place, but yeah, it was a little chilly for the desert.
Oh yeah. Well, if you're going to train up, though, NTC is the place to train up if you're going to the desert.
Oh yeah, and it was interesting. And it was wild how much of it actually, how much of it related, right? Because there was a lot of the same terrain, a lot of the same, it's wild how they have out there, the towns and stuff that they build up, and the actors and stuff they bring in. I mean, it truly is just like you would imagine it. As much as you could train like that, it was pretty close to the point. So yeah, it was interesting stuff.
So you felt you were pretty well prepared when you made the jump over, then? I
thought so. Yeah, I really do. We came out of NTC, and that's the cool thing about NTC is they train you and and you're supposed to mess up over there so you don't mess up down the line, right? So they'll throw you against insurmountable odds in NTC, so you'll go to over there and have better chances and stuff like that. And I feel like I learned a lot. And it was worth my time. It was definitely worthwhile to go and learn and see those things. So in real time.
So you were well prepared to go over. I remember I was as well. So looking back on coming back to Kansas, you're still in the military. How well prepared were you for when you left? Like when you went home? Did they prepare you for that?
Let's take a quick break.
Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on donations from our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and would like to support our continued efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the donate button. Thank you.
That's a that's a bit of a sticky situation. Me looking back, and now that I've gotten a little older and stuff like that, and realizing there's so much more you can do for people like this. At the same time, I also know that there was like an outboarding process, and they helped you with your resumes and stuff like that, and that's all nice and good and everything. But what they don't tell you, man, is just how mundane life can be, right? Especially when you come from a job like that. Where you'll never serve a greater purpose in your life, right, than to be in combat arms with each other. What do you do in the times that you don't have any idea of what to do, right? And I feel like that's where a lot of people fall to their demons, man, and a lot of people struggle, right, is to find that purpose, a sense of purpose again. I know I did. I ended up finding out a lot of like alcohol related abuse and stuff like that when I got out, because my friends didn't help, but at the same time I didn't want the help, right? It was something that I found fun or whatever, right? And I ended up wasting a lot of my time doing those things and stuff like that. But mainly I think it was because I just wasn't adjusting well to where I was, and it was a way to like just kind of get out of what mind state I was in for a little while, So I think there can be strides to get better. And like that's why I try to talk to veterans and stuff, and my interest in helping and giving back a little bit. I've had some opportunities to talk to people and stuff like that, is because like it can be very hard.
Well, and there's a meme out there. And so for someone listening to this 100 years from now, if you don't know what a meme is, it's a picture of something and then it has a little funny saying on it. And the one that sticks in my head is that, it says PTSD, and underneath it says, knowing that you're never going to be as badass as you once were. Right. And everyone laughs at that, but there's a little bit of truth in that, because when you're over there, you're kind of a rock star.
Right.
And then you come home and you're not a rock star anymore. And so it's difficult. It's just tough.
It is. And that's something I struggle with too. And, coming back from that, I honestly, I keep saying it, but I really can't explain in words and just how much meaning it is. Like, dude, I never had more purpose in my life than when I was over there. Mm-hmm. Whether that was like doing the thing for a local or doing like patrol with my squad mates or anything like that. Right. Like if there was a purpose in life, I was serving it. Right. And, and coming back and realizing like, oh, it's all over now. Right. You know what I mean? And, and it's just, it can be an addiction for sure. Is like that, not the combat, but just the purpose and drive and all those things. I think it's a very hard thing to get over. And I think that's why I ended up in law enforcement. And I think that's why I ended up driving ambulances before that. Right. And stuff like that, is trying to find that purpose to serve, no matter what it was. That's kind of where I fell.
Yeah. So you come home, you get out of the Army, you go back to Indiana, you have a child, mm-hmm. You have a relationship. If you don't mind, kind of walk me through what happened when you got home.
Yeah. So I came home and I'd recently gotten married and had a child, and I hadn't seen him in a couple months. So the big fear in my mind, right, was like how that was going to work and how how I was going to be a father, right, to someone hadn't seen in 6 months at the time.
Mhm.
And and I had a wife that I loved, but we weren't doing super well, and we ended up divorcing after that, which added a little bit of stress onto it. Coming home, family was good. Thankfully, my grandfather was still around at that time, and he was someone I could always, bond with and talk to and stuff like that. And we could swap those war stories a little bit and stuff like that. And I felt immense pride, being around him, and being able to say that I did those things. And, it's kind of like, man, like you told me those stories, 20 years ago, and here I am with you sitting around the kitchen table, right, drinking coffee, with you, and drinking beer. I remember the first beer you ever gave me, and sitting in the summer sun out there on the porch stool, and it was some of the best parts of it. There were other parts that were harder. I was trying to find work at the time, and I found a whole lot of jobs I didn't like. I worked some manual labor jobs that weren't super great, that I just kind of showed up to and kind of dabbled in and wasn't really super motivated to go to. I had some friends that were super close to me at the time, Jacob Allen Bell and Drew Sowers. They were my brothers. Jacob Allen Bell he passed away, but he's still my best friend, and I'll be with him one day, and I'll be able to tell him that all over again. And Drew Sowers is still out there. He's one of those guys that I never served with, but anytime I meet him, it's like I never left, and stuff like that. But yeah, and I was kind of listless, man, and I struggled, and I just kind of, I don't even know how to explain it. Finally found a job driving ambulances for the Eaton EMTs down there. I lived across the street from them, so it was so I never did it before, anything like that. But I picked up combat life saving when I was in the military, and I knew how that made me feel to help out and do those things. And when I found that and I was doing the ambulance driving, man, I found like I was helping again, and I found like I was serving a purpose. And and I knew that, like, at that time, right, like when the sirens came on, that I was, I had a mission that I was going to get them to and from, right, and I had a purpose again, right. Someone needs help, you come to help them,
Right.
And I dabbled in that for maybe 6 to 7 months before I finally took the plunge, and I went to Delaware County Sheriff's Department.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I like I said, I got an application, and I put it in, and I got hired on, and I started off in the jail working over there, and I met some really solid people over there. That was quite structured, quite like the military was. I had a chain of command. I had people every day on the bottom rung that I was serving with, and then I also had like a sergeant, and corporal, and all those things. So it almost felt like it was meant to be, right? I felt like I had that structure to where I knew where I was at all times. I knew what my job duties were. I knew, what the mission was, right? And it was exciting. There were things that happened in there that, you're felt needed, and you felt like, whether that be saving a life or helping someone out in certain ways. And I was lucked out to have really solid leadership out there. Sergeant Robert Brooks is one of the guys that helped me out a lot, getting my wings under me. And there's a couple others, Daniel Waters and a few. Some of them are still there, I believe. And I talked to quite a few of them pretty often. I worked there for a total of 4 years. I think it was about the first year in that I started getting into the CERT team side of things, the emergency response team. Mm-hmm. there. And I met a woman called, at the time it was Sergeant Wanda Pulliam, and she was a hard charger, and and she got my ass into shape pretty solid, and helped me out with a lot of things. And I was on the CERT team after that. And, and that was my stride, right? I found it back. And, and that was something I enjoyed for the long period of time there, as I did it. So.
Yeah. And so you left the sheriff's department, obviously.
Yep.
And so what after that? What'd you do after that?
So I left the sheriff's department in 2019, spring of 2019. And I went to school in a little town called Ely, Minnesota. in the very northern part, about 10 miles from Canada. And I went up there for outdoor leadership. I had recently, before then, was found that I was struggling a little bit with my mental state. And I found that the outdoors had helped me out a lot. It helped me relax. It helped me get out of my own head and going out in the nature and, just kind of decompressing. And I wanted to do that as a job. I thought that would be something that I would thoroughly enjoy. I didn't necessarily know too much about the outdoor field at the time, or what options were there. But I went there and I studied under Ivan Bartha. At the time, was one of my professors. And then the second year there, I was under Mark Carlson, and they're both really solid guys. And I still talk to them this day, and I think that they're some of the best professors I've ever had in my life, right? Because I formed bonds with them and stuff, and the trips that we led, and it was a great time. I learned a lot up there, and it was completely different from my wheelhouse that I've ever been in. Completely different from like military or public service through like ambulances or the law enforcement field, right? So it was a whole new unique field, and I don't think I would have succeeded in it as much as I have without them. So
we talk a little bit about struggling with mental health, and I think myself and a lot of fellow veterans struggled in that area, especially coming back from deployment and all the things that we talked about. What was that like for you? And I kind of see some of the things you did to get through it. But yeah, what was your struggle like? And if you don't mind sharing, and then what did you do to kind of get through it? Because you never get past it.
No,
you can get through it.
I think my biggest struggle was I went through large amounts of depression, and sadness. And it wasn't a particular reason why I was sad or anything like that. Like a lot of it, I think, stemmed from just not finding a place on purpose that I enjoyed thoroughly. And it was hard. I had a pretty negative self-image, and that carried me downwards quite a ways. I think something that got me through it a lot was as my son got older, the more the role I played in my son's life, and and what he meant to me. I think finding purpose and finding friends in law enforcement helped me out a lot. They kind of gave me drive to be better, to be more than what I could be, to outreach and help others, to do something else besides serve yourself. Definitely helped me out a lot. And unfortunately though, like the truth is I had to hit rock bottom before I ever found the strength to get up again. And, and I had to pretty much tear myself apart before I was able to build myself back up. Through my mental problems, I realized that, like in the end, all I have is myself. And I know I can do it. I could reach back in my mind and I could look back to my military service and the things that I've been through and realize that, like, dude, this isn't anything you've not already done before, right? And although it seems like such a monumental task, right, in your head, it's almost like it's that first person view, right? Like, I mean, this is I don't know what to do. I can't get through it, but you can reach back into your past references and realize you can do anything you set your mind to. And I think that helped out a lot over time, is building that self-confidence through experiences again, and some successes, right? But also some more failures, and realizing, that like, just because you fail doesn't mean it's over. You just have to get back up and keep trying. And, and over time, all the small victories led into big ones. And, and I'm back to a place that I'm happy with, and I still fail, and I still have moments of weakness in my heart and my mind. And, but I just keep moving. I just keep trucking along, and knowing that, when you're up, things never seem that good. And then when you're down, things never seem like they'll be that good again. Right. But you just kind of have to keep moving. I told myself that I would never stop until I'm dead. And I told myself that, and taking myself out of that equation was never an option. So I'm going to figure it out, and that might sound kind of blunt, but it's where it was in my mind at the time. Right. And I just kept on moving and kept trying new things, and wasn't afraid to branch out and take risks. And so far it's worked out for me,
Well, and that's good. And, a common theme throughout your life, right, as we're talking, is this continuous service to people. And I think that's a drive. I don't say all veterans feel that way, but I think many do. You'll see many veterans get into some sort of service industry, and they're not in the service industry. They find a way to serve people, outside of what they're doing. So, you went to school for a couple of years up in Minnesota. And so what are you doing now?
So currently right now, I'm in Bloomington, Indiana. I've been here about 2 years now. I transferred from my Ely school, Vermilion Community College, to Indiana University. I was attending classes there for a couple years. The first couple months in, my professor, Ivan Bartha, referred me to a man named Tyler Keeveland with the Indiana University Outdoor Adventures Group. And I started leading trips there and working in the gear shop. And I've found a great place where I'm leading trips with participants and students and taking them out of the outdoors to basically. So it's funny how it works is we take these kids out here that probably never been in the woods before in their life, right? And rather that be like whitewater kayaking, coastal kayaking, and canoeing, which paddling is my forte. It's where I'm at. That's just a vessel, right? But we're really teaching these kids is how to be self-reliant, right? We're teaching them confidence. We're teaching them teamwork. We're teaching them, communication, right? Like these are the skills that we're imparting onto these kids basically just through the means of going on a canoe expedition right down to Lake Monroe. So we don't tell them that off the rip, right? We just tell them we're going canoeing, but those are the things that we, that we look for to teach these kids, and stuff like that. So, yep. So I'm there and I'm no longer attending the university, but I think that's for the better. I don't think that it was the route that I was meant to go. And, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm happy working, 7 days a week sometimes, because on the weekends I'm leading trips and by Monday I'm back here working here. I was lucky to link up with a local business out of Bloomington called Bluestone Tree. And Jared Oren and Tiffany Oren are the owners, and Graydon as well. And they are truly inspirational people. Jared was a law enforcement officer for a couple of years. And he's one of the nicest people that you ever meet. I've been able to really learn a lot from that industry. And dude, they've taught me so much. And a great thing about them is their business model and how much they mean what they tell you, that like we're a family. I think a lot of people say that in work and these other things, and I think it kind of falls flat. I know I came to those people with actual personal issues and stuff like that, and they did nothing but to help me and talk to me about it. And they, and they're so nice to us and treat us so good that it's been an outstanding experience, and I look forward to keep working there in the future. So, yeah.
Well, good. So it sounds like, you've lived a good life. You've served people. You're still a young man. So there's we'll probably have to do part 2 of this when you're 98 or whatever.
Right.
But as we wrap up our conversation today, I'd like to ask, is there anything that you would like someone listening to this 50 or 100 years from now, is there anything you'd like for them to take away from our conversation?
Yeah. Yeah. If anybody was listening to this 50 years down the line that went through some of the things that I went through in my life, I would tell them the same thing I told myself, right? Was that, you can never give up in life, because you are the only one that you have, inevitably, right? At the end of the day, in life, that you are the only ones that matter. You and your family and the people that you care about, you may not be able to change the world, right? But there are differences that you can make in your family and in your community. And you'd be surprised how much those differences can compound in the future. Just like investments, right? The more you put into those things, the more you get out of them. And you can change people's lives, and you can serve a purpose. And it doesn't have to be a grand scheme of things. It doesn't have to be a war that will be fought and be remembered or forgotten. It can be the littlest things can mean the world to you if you just find a way to preserve them in your own heart. So.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Austin. It was great talking with you tonight. Thanks for taking the time out, and look forward to talking again.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Veterans Archives, the podcast that brings you the story of the men and women who have created and lived our military history. If you or someone you know served in the military and would like to share your story with Veterans Archives, please go to www.veteransarchives.org, select the Apply Now button, and fill out our application, and someone will get right back with you. Veterans Archives is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we rely on the donations of our listeners. If you are enjoying these stories and you support our efforts, please go to www.veteransarchives.org and select the Donate button. Any donation is certainly appreciated. Look for Veterans Archives on your favorite social media. We are on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Just look for Veterans Archives. Like, follow, and share our page. We'd certainly appreciate it. If you or someone you know is a veteran and you are struggling with mental health issues, please dial 988 and select option 1 for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. Please be sure to tune in next time for the next episode of Veterans Archives.